Hello and welcome back to the STaR Coach Show, where we share strategies, tools, and resources for coaches and leaders on how to be the best we can be in partnering with the people in our lives. Today, we are going to explore an essential skill about our mindset and how we show up to be great partners in a conversation. I'm your host, Meg Rentschler. Today, I want to dive into a critical aspect of coaching excellence, which is managing our emotional compass or emotionally regulating ourselves as coaches. Part of what truly embodies a coaching mindset is developing and maintaining the ability to regulate our emotions. This skill isn't just beneficial for us as coaches, it's helpful for us as leaders and as parents and as spouses. It's also transformative for our clients, our direct reports, whoever it is that we're working with. So before we dive in, I want to actually ask you for a minute to take a moment, subscribe wherever you're listening so that you never miss a moment of the STaR Coach Show. We bring a new episode to you each week, and on the third Thursday of the month, I record my live episode here with you. So always feel free to jump on and join me in the live episode. Now, to sort of set the stage for what we're talking about, I want to share something that happened to me just this past week. I was working with a coach who happens to be a client of mine, and they were describing a situation that really mirrored my own experience when I was building my business. So as they spoke, I felt my heart rate increasing. I felt a little angst start to reach up, maybe a little tightness in my chest. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to make the same mistakes I did. I need to warn them. They need to do something different. They need to look at this differently. And in that moment, when I was sort of hijacked by my emotions, I had a choice. I could either let those emotions drive my coaching and then jump in with advice, steer the conversation towards my agenda, my concerns, or I could recognize what was happening and regulate my response to remain present for my client's unique journey. This is the kind of emotional mastery we're going to talk about today. Because we are all human beings, and as we coach, things are going to rise up within us. Yet to be the best coaching partner we can be, we've got to be aware of that and be tuned into what's happening here, not in a way that we take over the session, but in a way that we stay regulated so that we can stay fully present with our clients. Now, emotions aren't random. They're actually clues that point to the thoughts that we are having at any given time and the self-talk that's chattering through in our brains. When we feel frustrated with a situation, maybe we're anxious for a client, their progress, maybe we're overly invested in a particular outcome. Those feelings that come up are actually beacons illuminating what's happening within us. So the key is to slow down and discover what's really happening beneath the surface. What thoughts are generating the emotions that I'm feeling? What stories am I telling myself at this moment? What expectations or assumptions am I making right now that aren't serving this coaching relationship? So let me give you an example. Let's say a coach feels impatient with a client who seems stuck and struggling. So some of the underlying thoughts that need to be exposed and dealt with might be, this client just isn't trying hard enough, or I'm not being effective enough as a coach. We should be further along by now. What is the organization going to think if I don't get better results with this client? This reflects poorly on my coaching abilities. So, all these thoughts that could be running under the radar or chattering in the background really need to be identified. Once they're identified and sort of brought to the light of day, we can test those assumptions. We can also just tune into the fact that they're not serving this. So, first of all, are they true? Are they helpful? What perspective is going to be more accurate and more supportive of the coaching relationship? It's important to understand how we can sometimes put ourselves in the middle of the session when it's supposed to be the client in the middle of the session. We want to refocus on our clients and determine what's the crucial element for the client. Coaching is a relationship built on trust and presence and attunement. So we need, as coaches or leaders, but I'm going to kind of focus on coaches in this conversation, but go ahead and switch whatever word, whether it's leader, parent, spouse. We need to be able to regulate our emotions so that we can create a container of safety for our clients to explore their own challenges. Unregulated emotions can quickly lead us into hijack sessions where we project our own issues onto our clients, miss important clues because we're too caught up in our own heads, our own emotional responses. In addition to this, when coaches model emotional regulation to their clients, that kind of is a good role model. Many clients who seek coaching might also be struggling with their own emotional regulation in high stakes situations. So seeing their coach navigate emotions, staying present, staying focused can be incredibly valuable. Now, I want to share 5 specific techniques that you as coaches can use to master your emotional compass. First, let's develop a pre-session centering ritual. You can take 5-10 minutes, if you have it, before each coaching session to check in on yourself. But you could do this even in 2 minutes if need be. But your responsibility is to kind of show up in the session centered and ready to go. So you want to cushion between your sessions time to check in here, release any emotion that isn't serving you, and set an intention for this upcoming session. So how do you do that? Notice your current emotional state, any preconceptions that you might have about what's coming up, release anything that was happening before, and then once again, set that intention to shift into a state of openness, curiosity, total presence. In addition to developing a pre-session centering ritual, I also encourage you as my second technique to practice the pause. When you notice an emotional charge during a session, maybe you begin to feel defensive or impatient or nervous, even overly excited. Take a pause. Take a breath. Create the space between the trigger and your response. This tiny moment can make all the difference. You can invite yourself to release whatever it is that has arisen for you. When I have a thought that suddenly sneaks up on me that could conceivably hijack me or hijack the session, in that moment of pause, I thank it for showing up because it's showing up for a reason, even if it's bad timing. It's showing up for a reason. So I'm going to thank it and release it because this is not the time. I can't focus on that right now. I'm focused on my client. So, a pre-session centering ritual. Second, really honor the pause. And third, use body awareness as an early warning system for anything that might come up. Our bodies often signal the emotional reaction before our conscious mind registers them. Are you feeling tension in your shoulders? Has your breathing gotten more shallow? Do you feel a knot in the stomach? By regularly scanning your body and checking in as you're partnering with your clients, you can catch those emotional reactions early. Now, what do we do with that as we notice that something has arisen? Well, I would encourage you to just pay attention to your thought objectively rather than that it is the truth. Often it is a warning signal of something, but it's often not appropriate at this exact moment. So I'm going to offer you a simple framework to think about when you're in that moment of staying present and focused with the client, but also regulating what's going on here. Ask yourself, is the thought that's coming up factually true? If it was something that came up that you didn't release, but you're wondering if it needs to come into this session, evaluate that. Am I absolutely certain that this is a good situation or thought to bring forward? What's the evidence that supports or contradicts it? You not and in getting hijacked and taken away from the session, but sort of quickly, this is often the case if an intuition comes up or if something comes up that you feel compelled to share. I really encourage you to slow down and determine, is this the best time to share this? Is this something that needs to be shared? Once you have determined the impact of the thought, another question to ask yourself, does holding this thought at this moment help me to be a more effective coach? Is it serving my client? What would be possible if I let it go? When we're in the place of being an effective coach and having our own emotions regulated, we want to be balanced. We want to always be encouraging the client to share, to be in the place of harvesting what they're offering. And being aware that if our thought that is arising, if an emotion that's arising triggered by a thought is not serving us, we can release it. If it's rising and you suspect that it's worth sharing, that's where you really need to do some of this evaluation and then create that balance between the primary focus being on the client and only sharing if it's an accurate and helpful thing to add to the moment, to the situation. So we start with our first tip of sort of doing that centering practice before session. Secondly, being aware of the pause and the importance of the pause. being tuned in that we are a whole being as a coach. So, what is our body telling us? And then sort of evaluating that. And then once again, in the competency of embodies a coaching mindset, it talks about what's your reflective practice. What are you doing as a coach to maintain a practice that helps you reflect on your own growth, reflect on how you're showing up in the relationships, reflect on your coaching mindset? So, if helpful, everybody's got their own sort of mindfulness practice, but I would encourage you to maintain a reflection journal. After sessions, document any moments of emotional activation for yourself. Tune into what triggered you, what thoughts arose for you. How do you feel like you responded? What would you maybe do differently the next time? Over time, maintaining a journal, maintaining a record of our growth helps us notice patterns to increase our awareness of what's happening here so that we can prepare better for similar situations moving forward. Finally, our fifth tip today is work with your own coach. Have someone help you explore your emotional patterns, especially those that are showing up maybe more regularly than you'd like. I recently, in my Tuesday tips this week, I shared the fact that I'm currently working with a coach, and I went through some bumpy stuff in, my own life, some different things that were distracting me. And we were able to work that through. We were able to talk. She was able to, review my coaching with me, listen to it, give me some ideas, challenge me to think about what's happening with myself. We all have blind spots. A skilled coach can help you navigate those. And so, if we say that we believe in coaching and that coaching is a valuable thing to do, what are you doing to invest in your own coaching? And using a coach to help with emotional regulation is a beautiful thing. That's part of coaching supervision. So let's look at some examples of different scenarios that coaches face that can bring up this emotional deregulation, right? That can trigger these responses in us. One that I hear often is when a coach feels personally invested in their client making a specific choice. Maybe you're an internal coach and you know that a particular choice is going to help the organization. Maybe you've been hired by an organization and you really want this client to do well. And you've heard feedback from the manager about what needs to happen. And so you're feeling sort of pulled in that direction. Or maybe it's simply because you're attached to that outcome because you're thinking, I really know what's best for them. I just know that this is what they need to do. Or their success reflects on my coaching. So what I encourage you to do is step back and recognize, okay, I'm attached to this. I am not it's not that I'm just offering without attachment. I'm attached. So I'm attached, and what are the emotions that are generating for me? Take a breath. Remind yourself the client is the expert in their life. And as we go back to embodies the coaching mindset, they're responsible for the choices in their life. Reframe your role. Remind yourself that you are not an advice giver or a fixer. You are a thought partner. You are a partner in this process of self-discovery and self-determination for your client. And then ask yourself, what would I ask if I truly had no preference about what they choose to do? What can I ask that will help them move forward in the way that will best serve them? Now, something I want to stress, because I see coaches struggle with this, is that it does not mean that you as a coach have no perspective. But what it means is that your perspective is not in the driver's seat. Your perspective is not the most important perspective in the coaching session. The client's perspective is what we're trying to understand and then get them to expand. But it means holding your perspective lightly to create space for the client's wisdom to emerge. The second example or sample that I want to talk about that can happen to trigger our emotions is when a client's story is too close to something that we are dealing with ourselves in our past, or it's something that's sort of our expertise or our niche. And, much like when I shared about my client who is a coach who's building their business and some of the things that came up for me. So when this happens, when a client's experience sort of triggers your own memory or your own expertise or your own, gets your focus turned within, what I recommend is that you notice that emotional activation and just acknowledge it. Then bookmark it for later, right? For later exploration. Much like I said earlier, sort of thank it, be aware of it, and release it. This is not your time for your reflection time. It's time to get your attention fully back onto the client and their unique circumstances. Because even when we've had similar experiences, that's our model of the world, and we need to get refocused onto the client's model of the world. Get curious about what is unique about their experience. It might very well differ from your experience. And once again, that does not mean that as coaches, we don't offer without attachment. We certainly might if it's appropriate to move the client forward. So it doesn't mean that your insights from similar experiences aren't valuable, but they're offered lightly, they're offered without attachment, only when truly relevant to the client's goals and that the client is ahead. The client is the one that's leading the way. Now, there's so many different things about this human connection that happens in the coaching relationship. But I want to highlight that emotional regulation isn't about us tapping down or denying that emotions are there. It's about developing a wise relationship with our emotions. Recognize that they bring value. They bring information. So we want to be tuned in to learn, but not allow them to drive our coaching unconsciously. Great coaches are not emotionless. They're emotionally masterful. They use their emotional compass as a sophisticated instrument that enriches the coaching relationship rather than distorting it. This is not like, oh, one and done, let's think about it and we're good to go. No, this is lifelong work. Even the most experienced coaches continue to discover new emotional patterns, new opportunities for growth. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is that we continually raise our awareness, which offers new choice and continuous development. So I want to leave with maybe one simple practice you could implement beginning today to strengthen your emotional regulation muscle. And let's just name it to tame it, right? So throughout your day, not just in coaching sessions, pause periodically and name the emotion that you're experiencing at that time. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling excited. I'm feeling uncertain. When we can label our emotions, it activates our prefrontal cortex and reduces the intensity of the emotional response. Now, the other thing and while by doing that, it really builds our neural pathways that support our own emotional regulation in times that are more challenging because we're practicing throughout the day. We're practicing when we're not at a high emotional level. The other thing that acknowledging our emotions does is it allows us to tune into, if I'm feeling this way, what is the thought that I'm telling myself? What's going on up here that's driving that emotion? Because there is a thought behind that emotion somewhere. And as we begin to tune into the things we're telling ourselves, the conversations we're having that trigger those emotions, we can be that much more self-aware when we're working with our clients. That is the wrap for today's session. And I would love to hear whether this was helpful for you. Do you ever feel like you get hijacked by your emotions in a client session? What have you done that is helpful? I'd love for you to leave a comment below this video if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening on the platform. Never hesitate to send me a note at meg@afocusonresults.com. I want to thank you for listening to another episode of the STaR Coach Show, to this live episode that I do my solo episodes live the third Thursday of the month on the YouTube channel at STaR Coach Show. If you want to know when they're going to come out, subscribe to the channel and you'll get notified when I go live and you can join me. I want to remind you one more time that emotions are clues. They're not commands. They're not a being in and of themselves. When we can slow down to discover and test the thoughts behind our feelings, we can develop emotional mastery that truly embodies a coaching mindset. It will serve you, it will serve your clients, and it will make you a more disciplined coach who is creating a new experience for your clients in the partnership of the coaching relationship. When I think about how we show up emotionally, I just want to remind you that as human beings, we are all on this earth together, and times can get tough and things can get tumultuous lately. And yet, if we can remember that we're all connected, we are all here to do the heavy lifting together, maybe, just maybe, that will help forge some of the gaps that seem to be available right now. So be kind to yourself, be kind to one another. And until next week, this is Meg Rentschler wishing you the very best for your success. Thanks for being here.